Hello, friend. Welcome back to This Leader. Today, I want to start with a story, and you might even recognize yourself in this story because it is that common. I was sitting in a room with the leadership team not long ago. It was all the executives and all of their direct reports. Okay, so these are the people in an organization that make things happen. I love these folks. They're smart, experienced people, people who genuinely care about their organization and the folks they lead, and they're working hard to do the best job possible. So we're in the middle of a meeting where one member of the executive team made an announcement, okay, to this whole group, something about a timeline, about when a major initiative was going to roll out. And the room went kind of quiet, and not the good kind of quiet. I watched people glance at each other. I saw a few slightly raised eyebrows. And then one of the other executives piped up and said, "Wait, I thought we were doing that differently." And someone else whispered, "Yeah, I was under the impression the timeline was different." So that's what happened, right? And that tells us that this announcement was a surprise to at least a few other people in the room. Now, in this case, it wasn't catastrophic. The timeline was clarified. We're back on track, moving on, no problem. But here's what stayed with me. The people downstream, okay, the rest of the leaders in the room who heard the announcement, just for a minute now, they're trying to figure out what's actually happening. They didn't see the recovery part. That was done after the fact, but they experienced confusion and they saw hesitation. And quietly, in ways that no one will track or measure, they started wondering, hey, are those people at the top actually in agreement? Are these decisions real? Should I just wait it out? I mean, is it worth getting invested and starting to take action on something that might, I don't know, change? Okay? Think about it, right? This decision, this timeline gets switched, then people are like, wait, is that what we're doing? And it sends a message that very subtly tells people, hey, maybe there's not alignment here. Okay? And that's the cost, my friend. That is the cost of misalignment. And it's kind of invisible until it isn't. Here's the thing about alignment. Most leaders think they have it. After all, when the original decision was made, the whole team was in the room, right? Everyone seemed to agree. They nodded. Nobody raised their hand and said, I object. So we moved forward, assuming we're all on the same page. You've been in that room. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, okay? And a decision is made. Everyone seems to agree. Nobody says, I object. So we move forward. But then something happens, something like that moment I just described, right? Or think about it this way, like a decision gets quietly reversed by someone who was on board, or so we thought. Or the same issue, it comes back to the table 3 meetings in a row because it's not actually getting resolved, or it never got resolved the first time. Or a key team member just, I don't know, doesn't prioritize the one thing that everyone else agreed was a priority. So decisions get relitigated, time gets wasted, people disengage, and the whole time, the leaders are wondering why momentum is so hard to sustain. So I'll tell you why, right? Because we are often achieving compliance, not alignment. And those are not the same thing. So let me give you 3 words that sound similar but mean very different things, because getting clear on these is the whole game, right? The first word is clarity. Did a podcast episode about it just a couple back now. Go find it if you haven't listened to it. Clarity means that everyone understands the direction. And there's things that you can be very clear about and you can really drive for clarity. And that is super important. And that's why I did a whole episode on it. But let's say that clarity means everyone understands the direction. They know what was decided. They know what they're supposed to do. Okay? Clarity is essential. You cannot move forward without it. But clarity alone is not enough, because I can be completely clear on what you've decided, but I can still think it's the wrong call, right? I can understand the direction, but I can still have zero investment in actually getting there. Clarity is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The second word is compliance. Okay, so we've got clarity. Now we're going to talk about compliance. Compliance is what happens when people go along behaviorally without being genuinely on board. They show up to the meetings, they nod in the right places, they say the right things, while underneath, they're kind of waiting for it to fail, or they're doing it slowly, or they're venting to their peers about how this was never going to work, or they're quietly just not prioritizing it in ways that are completely plausible and very hard to call out. Those are all things that can happen. Compliance looks like alignment. It is not alignment, okay? Compliance means I am behaving along with what you wish, what you hope I will do, but my heart is not in it, right? And the thing that makes compliance so dangerous, it's often invisible. Nobody walks into your meeting and announces, "Hey, I am behaviorally compliant, but I am emotionally checked out." They they don't say that. They just act that way, right? They just disengage a little bit and you don't realize what you're looking at until the timeline slips or the initiative stalls or someone says unprompted, I don't know why we're doing this. Patrick Lencioni has written about this for years, right? He calls this one a lack of commitment. He talks about this. He names this as one of the 5 core dysfunctions that undermine team performance. And he talks about this in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And in his language, he talks about commitment. And commitment is not about consensus. It's about getting, everyone should participate in the dialogue and the debate, and then they need to choose to get behind the decision. Okay? That's commitment. Listen, I had my voice heard. I expressed my doubts. I jumped in and I talked about what I thought was going to go wrong, et cetera. We debated it until, we came to the end of the road and then we made the decision. And so now I can just get on board. Hey, maybe this wasn't what I would have done. Maybe I'm not getting my way, but now I'm on board. A lot of people say things like debate and decide, right? You debate and you decide, or like you can debate it in the room, but when you walk out that door, you've got that level of commitment. Okay, so commitment is alignment. That's what we're looking for. Commitment is not compliance. I mean, compliance is great. We like people to comply, but commitment is even better. Commitment is compliance plus engagement and heart and willingness, okay? And that all adds up to alignment. So alignment means, and that's the third word, by the way, alignment. The alignment means I'm invested in this, not because it was my idea, not because I've got everything I wanted, but because I was part of a real conversation. My perspective was genuinely considered, and now I'm choosing to move forward, both in my words and in my behaviors, which means I'm going to comply with what we decide, and I'm going to not kick the idea under the bus to other people. I'm not going to go around saying, well, I would have done it differently, right? We don't do that. When you're a leader and you're part of a decision, you grapple with the hard parts, you make the decision, and then you stand by it. That is alignment. And it is more rare and more precious than we think. So how do you get there? This is where I want to talk about process, because alignment is not something that happens by accident. It's not something that happens because you have a great team or good intentions alone, okay? It happens because you do the work in a specific order with intention, okay? Good intentions help, right? But I want to name something first. Most teams don't have a very clear process for making decisions, okay? Think about that for a second. Most teams don't have a lot of clarity around decision making. They have a meeting, they have conversations. Someone with the most authority or the most energy or the loudest voice eventually lands on a direction, and everyone else either agrees or maybe goes along or maybe they stay quiet. And we call that a decision. Let's see, that could be a decision, okay? But it's not the best way to make a decision. I mean, that's really a moment that looks like a decision. And here's what a real decision-making process looks like, one that actually gets you set up for alignment. So think about it this way. First off, you want to get everyone in the same frame. Here's what I mean. Before you can solve a problem, you have to agree on what the problem actually is. This sounds almost insultingly obvious, but I promise you it is not. I sit in rooms all the time where half the table is solving one problem and the other half is solving a slightly different one, but nobody's really noticed because we've jumped over, finding clarity about the problem that we're solving, and we've jumped over that right to trying to solve it. Okay, so the first step is that you have to kind of agree, wait, what is the problem that we are solving? What is it? Can we just write it down? Can we name it? Is it nameable? Or, it doesn't always have to be a problem. It could be, what is the opportunity that we want to seize? And then why do we want to seize it? So the first job in this process is to spend some time exploring, get curious, ask what's actually happening here? What's the real problem that we're trying to solve? Dig for that. Do your 5 why exercise, and why is that a problem? And why is that a problem? Because you want to get to the real problem that you're trying to solve. Or again, the real opportunity that's ahead of us. Okay. So I'm just going to make this up off the top of my head. Let's say somebody says, we need to institute better AI protocols. Okay. We need to institute better AI protocols or better AI security systems or something like that. And it's like, okay, that sounds great. That's a solution. Okay, very good. Let's just back up a minute and let's talk about what is the problem that we're trying to solve. Are we having AI security issues or are we just preparing for eventual AI security issues? Either's fine. It doesn't matter. But let's just decide. Let's be clear from the start. No, we haven't had any problems to date, knock on wood, but we anticipate that we will because everyone is having problems in the industry and we want to shore ourselves up and make sure that our risk is low. So let's dedicate some time and attention to solving these problems. Okay, great. Now let's write that down. Let's just write it down because now we've decided that there is a potential problem on the horizon. It's real enough that we need to solve it. Now we're in the same frame. We all know what we're trying to do, and we have a bit of the reason why, okay? So we probably want to fill in the why a little bit more. We want to explore. We want to talk about what is the gap, between where we are now and where we want to be. What's the risk level? Who's affected? What could it cost us if we did nothing? What does this situation really call for, right? It's an exploratory discussion. You want to explore. You want to explore here. You're not generating solutions just yet. You're building a shared frame, a common picture of the situation that everyone in the room is looking at together. Because here's the thing, you can't align on a solution if you haven't aligned on the problem. So start there. This step is worth more meeting time than most leaders give it. So set aside time and explore until you can get the frame set. Like, okay, this is what we are dealing with, and this is the why, this is the what, and then you start moving into the how. So step 2 is to invent some solutions, and I say grapple with them. Go in there and work them through. Because once you've agreed on the problem, now you're going to generate options. Not just one, or not the option that the most senior person in the room already thinks is the answer, because boy, does that happen a lot. But real options, like test a few different approaches. Get creative. Think about things you haven't tried before. Think about things that other teams or industries have done or are doing. And then roll up your sleeves and grapple with those ideas. Stress test the ideas. Ask what could go wrong. Pass the ideas through your strategic filters. Think about what matters most to us. What constraints are we working with? What would success really look like for us? What resources do we have? You want to debate the different ideas. You want to disagree. You want to refine, right? This can be uncomfortable, okay? And it's the part that a lot of teams skip because it takes time. It can feel like conflict. And for a lot of people, conflict's really uncomfortable. But if you skip it, you arrive at a decision without having genuinely explored the landscape. And the people in the room who had concerns that they never voiced, well, now they may be going along to get along, right? That's compliance. It's not alignment. So Chip and Dan Heath wrote this great book called Decisive. Great book. And their core finding is essentially this, that most of us make decisions that are systematically flawed. Like our decision-making processes are systematically flawed for many reasons, but some of them include this. Like we approach decisions too narrowly. We're really thinking narrowly about a problem when we need to think broader. We have too much confidence in our first instinct. That's another thing that they say we do wrong. Like we We have a gut reaction. Oh, we should do this. And we go with it, right? Because we think we have a lot of confidence first in our instinct. And then we think that we can sort of predict the future by what's happened in the past. So those are three of their findings. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. But they also offer up an antidote, which I like, and that is essentially having a more intentional process. Okay. And the essence of their process is the same thing I recommend. Just slow it down, be more exploratory, be more rigorous, be more intentional. Because slow isn't necessarily better, but thorough and intentional, those are the important things. So putting a process into place and then following it, that's thorough and that's intentional. Okay, so now step 3. Let me just go back. Let me just say again, step 1 was getting everyone in the same frame, kind of aligning on what the problem is. Step 2 is inventing potential solutions to that and grappling with the solutions, like really stress testing the potential solutions. And step 3 is about stepping over the decision line. I like to think of it that way. Really and truly, step over the decision line. We talk about this a lot in Working Genius world, but it sounds a little funny, but it's essential. Like after all the exploring and grappling and refining, you have to make the decision explicit. I just say, take 30 seconds and name it out loud. Just say, we have decided X. We are moving forward with Y. Like this is what we are doing. And don't say things like, hey, I think we're leaning towards such and such, or it sounds like the consensus is blah, 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 or hey, let's revisit this next week. Obviously, sometimes it's good to revisit a decision later and be like, sounds like our decision is this. Let's come back and verify tomorrow after we sleep on it. That's actually not a bad idea. But you want to be clear. When a decision is made, say the words. We just made a decision. The decision is this. I know it sounds, sometimes people go, oh, well, everyone knows that. Well, just assume they don't. Okay, here is our decision. And then a lot of people go, does everyone agree? And that's not necessarily good either. I like to have people actually visually show me that they agree by doing something. Okay. They might literally step over a line. Sometimes I make people do that. I go, step over here when you feel like you are in alignment with this decision and you're ready to move forward. Or we take a hands in the air vote. Everyone put your hand in the air and keep it in the air so that I know that you are behind this decision, right? Just trying to get people to be very clear that they're committing, they've crossed the line. And then ask, okay, is everyone able to support this? You don't have to say, does everyone love this or is everyone in complete agreement? But asking, can you get behind this? Can you speak to this as if it were your own idea? Because we have decided this together. That question, it makes a huge difference. So try it. Okay. Step 4, communicate with intention. For the people who are in the room, you've done the work, right? So those people have rolled up their sleeves and grappled with the solutions and they were there when they stood by the decision. But alignment does not stop at the door of the conference room. There's going to be people downstream who are going to be asked to implement what you just decided, and they weren't part of the original conversation. For them, you are not going to achieve true alignment unless you give them a real opportunity to get engaged, push back, ask questions, and grapple themselves with the trade-offs that are necessary for the decision to take hold. Okay? What you can achieve with those decisions that will be handed down, it's informed commitment. So think about it that way. Maybe they weren't part of the original conversation, so maybe you're not going to get as deep or rich of alignment, but you can certainly get informed commitment. And that requires a specific kind of message, which isn't just like, here's what we've decided. The message is much more thorough. So let me give you kind of a little template here. I like to encourage people to share the thinking, to say, hey, as we're communicating with the rest of the organization, all right, we've made a decision, but let me start at the beginning. Here's the problem that we were solving, and we explored the problem, and here's some really unique things about the problem. So go ahead and lay out the problem statement, right? Share with people where you started. Get them in the same frame that you were in. Then tell them, boy, we considered a range of options. Here are some of the top ones, sort of the top contenders. And go ahead and share the range of options. But then share, here's why we chose this option over the others. Okay, tell them the why. That basically is going to be like, here was the criteria we used to make the decision. And then finally, here's what we need from you, right? Here's what we're hoping from you. And you can even say, and here are times and places where you can speak to your leadership about these decisions, etc. This kind of thorough messaging, it respects their intelligence. It gives them the frame, makes it much more likely that they'll actually get behind it rather than just complying. Okay, so that's the process. And if you build that into how your team makes decisions, you're going to see a dramatic shift in the quality of your alignment. But I want to be honest with you about something. The process itself is about half of it, right? Because even the best process in the world can be derailed by the mental models that we walk into the room with. I'm talking about the internal posture you bring to the decision-making conversation before a single word has been said. And I want you to think about this carefully because I've caught myself in these traps many times. The first one is coming in to these meetings to sell your idea instead of to explore, right? Are you walking in the room with a solution already pre-baked? You've already decided what the answer is. You know what you want, and you're not there to genuinely consider other perspectives? Okay, that's not great, okay? Because you could be sort of acting like you're curious, but inside you're really just waiting for your turn to talk so you can convince someone else. I've been there. I think most of us have. That is a trap that will keep you from getting great decisions made and from true alignment. The second trap is protecting your turf instead of protecting the outcome. Think about that. Don't protect your turf, protect the outcome. Because when a conversation starts to touch on your area, I don't know, your budget, your team, your territory, and you find that your orientation shifts, like you're not thinking about what's best for the organization now, you're thinking about what's best for you. And every idea that threatens your corner of the world, you're quietly dismissing. Okay, just again, be aware. These are mindsets that we need to be aware of. The third one is doubling down instead of getting curious. So, for example, if someone pushes back on your idea, you have an idea that you've shared and somebody goes, well, you want to say, okay, I hadn't thought of that. Help me understand your concern, right? Do you do that? That's curiosity. Or do you double down, like push harder? No. This is what I meant. You get louder. You add more evidence. You treat disagreement as a problem that can be overcome rather than information that should be considered. Okay? And the fourth mindset trap here, and this one's kind of sneaky, is blaming the breakdown on everyone else. When alignment falls apart, okay, when decisions get reversed or commitments don't get honored, it's very tempting to look around the room and identify who failed. Of course, it's never you, right? It's always someone else. Who didn't follow through? Whose idea was this? Whose fault is this? And that is one question that will never, ever get you to alignment. So here's the self-awareness check I want you to run on yourself before your next high-stakes decision conversation. I want you to ask yourself, am I here to find the best answer or am I here to win? Okay? Those are different meetings, and only one of them leads to alignment. Guess which one it is? Am I here to find the best answer? That's it. Okay, now I got to be real with you because I know this trap from the inside. I've sat in more than a few conversations where things got tense and uncomfortable. It started to feel personal, and I just let go. I went along, not because I was actually convinced, but because I was tired. Because staying in the discussion felt like more than I had the energy for at the time. Let's say I was grappling with ideas with someone who was more forceful, louder, possibly a little bit insulting, and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't worth it, right? But what I'm choosing in that moment, without consciously choosing it, of course, is to comply. That's what I'm choosing. I am then the misalignment. I'm choosing compliance. Therefore, I am likely to do some of the things we talked about at the beginning, possibly. Maybe I'll drag my feet. Maybe I'll badmouth the decision later. I don't know. I like to think I don't, but it's possible. So it's possible for all of us. This is what I want you to think about. So what I've learned, and this took me a long time, is that having a clear process is actually what makes it possible for someone like me who's a little conflict avoidant to stay present in the room. Okay. Some people are like, we don't need a process. We're good decision makers. Okay, that's great. But what about the people sitting around the table who are a little less or a little more, say, conflict averse than you are? You want their alignment too. So using a process can help them feel safe, can help them feel engaged, and can really invite them in a way that maybe your current process is not doing. So when you're working through this structured sequence, you're exploring together until you land on the problem. You're grappling with the same problem and the potential solutions. You've got rules of engagement, right? Things like that, it takes so much of the interpersonal heat out of the conversation. It becomes less about me versus you and more about us versus the problem. And that's what makes it possible for a lot of people to keep going, to stay curious and to get to something real. Process is not the opposite of connection. I think that people often think, I don't want to get too process oriented around this because it's going to take me out of the moment. But it's not the opposite of connection. It doesn't actually derail connection. It is often what makes connection possible when things get hard. So when you spot these mental model traps in someone else, don't ignore it and push through. Just pause. Call a timeout. Something as simple as, hey, let's check in for a minute. I want to make sure we're all, still trying to tackle this problem. I want to make sure we're all still aligned and approaching this the same way. That's it. That kind of a reset can change the trajectory of a meeting and can make for much better decisions in the end. And here's what I'll tell you, because we're going to go deeper on mental models in future episodes. I love that stuff. I mean, the way we think about ourselves and about others and about conflict, this is your leadership edge. It's your leadership identity, and it comes with you everywhere. So let's stay conscious of that. Stay tuned. Future episodes, we'll keep talking about that. So let me bring this home. Alignment is not just a feeling. It's not a nod. It's not the absence of objection. It's the result of a real process, one where people genuinely explore together and grapple with options and genuinely hear each other out and test ideas and then genuinely choose to commit, even when it wasn't their first choice. And it requires each person in the room to show up with the right internal posture. Curious, not defensive, exploring instead of selling, invested in the outcome instead of protecting their turf. When you have both the process and the posture, alignment is truly achievable. And what becomes possible on the other side of it is remarkable. Faster execution, stronger trust, decisions that hold, and teams that move together instead of pulling in different directions. That, my friend, is worth the work. So here's what I want you to do this week. Think about one decision that you might be in the middle of or something you're about to make, and ask yourself honestly, are we actually aligned? Do we have a process that will get us to alignment? Or are we being compliant? And if you're not sure, that might be the most important question you raise with your team. Now, if what I described today truly resonates with you, if the process, the posture, getting your team to a place of genuine alignment rather than just surface agreement, if that resonates with you, if you think that you could benefit from that, this is exactly the work I do with leaders and teams. I call it strategic partnership, and it's one of the ways I work alongside leaders to help them build the kind of decision-making culture where alignment becomes the norm rather than the exception. I'll guide you through the process. I'll give you the roadmap. I'll help your team practice with real decisions until it becomes second nature. And if you're ready to explore what that could look like for you and how your team could uplevel your decision-making, I'd love to have that conversation with you. So just head on over to clairelaughlin.com and hit the little button in the top right that says schedule a consultation. I'd love to connect. That's it for today. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode hit home, share it with another leader who needs to hear it. The more of us who lead with intention, the better our organizations become. Until next week, go lead the way.